Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be working in the shop, continuing on the progress of Army Truck No.2. Pretty ambitious. We're going to get a bunch of things done, I hope. It's going to include adding electrical connector for the cab headlights, remove the Atlas hood logo, install signs on the doors, raise the battery box for the cab lift mounts, bolt flatbed to cross members, build the tower behind the cab, install heavier suspension coil springs, and install the wood deck on the flatbed. This is going to be fun. Let's get started.
I was thinking a couple of different thoughts. One was, instead of making this cab tilt ahead, maybe just make it removable. So what I'm planning on doing here is cutting these wires and then soldering. I got the solder pencil being warmed up here, and then soldering these new wires onto here, and then covering them up with some heat shrink. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. I think I'll cut this wire somewhere in the middle. That'll leave me room to slide the heat shrink up over each end before I hooded it. Okay, it's cut. Let's see if I can split those conductors apart there. Pretty thin wires. Reminds me of working with old telephone wires a long time ago, where I'd end up breaking the wire so easily that I ended up making it shorter and shorter. As a general rule, whenever I make plugs, I always like making the side that's hot be the one that's doesn't have exposed connectors, and the side that's getting the power being the one that might have the plug. But in this particular case, we got this big socket here with pins inside, and this is when we have the sockets, but it's also got these exposed here. So in either one of these cases, you could have exposed conductors that would short out. So what I decided on the previous one here's the battery, is I made the ones that have these big sockets as being the hot side. So we'll do the same thing on this new one. Okay, figure out a good length here. This is how these cables end up being long, as I add all these pieces on like this. So that's there. This one, see how easy this one is to strip. We'll give it a try with my fingernail again. That looks like it worked. Set of real small wire strippers might be good at this point. I think we got it. There's the wires. The other thing I usually forget to do before I hook wires up is slide anything up over the wires. So I decided to cut the heat shrink in half. The full length looked like a little long. We'll slide it up over the existing cables there. That way it'll be ready to go. Somebody told me one time that before you solder something, you should make a good mechanical connection to hold the wires together. So what I usually like to do is just kind of twist them around each other like this. Get them. That looks pretty clean. Looks like it'll fit over there like that. Okay. We'll see if we can heat that up and put some solder on this joint here. Okay, with that soldered together there, I can slide the the heat shrink up over the joint. And here again, I don't have a heat gun, so I'll just kind of, what I kind of do is sometimes I just kind of heat up the heat shrink with the heat from the solder pencil. Doesn't look quite as neat and not quite as good, but I think for what we're doing, it's going to work just fine. And now with the thing all done, we'll slide the heat shrink back over that joint. Now we'll see if we got the wires in the right place. Here's red to red, black to black. There you go. Turn on the switch on the controller. There we go. We got lights. Now with the cab separate from the truck, I'm free to work on the cab by itself, or I can work on the truck now, all the modifications on it, without having the cab in the way, hung on by that. Typical of a lot of RC bodies, they're made out of plastic, some kind of clear, I think Lexan or something like that, and they come clear, and because they're, especially with rock crawlers and race cars, they're always flipping over and getting scratched up, and so they usually paint them from the inside. In fact, I think in this case, probably this blue paint was probably put on the inside, and then it was covered up with this white to kind of seal it up and make it look good. And that way, when it gets all scratched up, it doesn't actually scratch the paint. But I noticed on these Atlas bodies, and then the black, like on the fenders and probably here, then that was painted on the outside. In fact, I'm pretty sure of that, because on this truck here, you can see from the abuse that I've been giving it, that you can see the black paint is coming off parts of the fenders. So what I did on the last one, I scraped off the outside here to get the Atlas logo, and I'm thinking for the same thing, for this truck here, I'm going to try to do the same thing. Okay, that seemed to work pretty good. I'm sure there's people out there that are saying, no, you just scratched it all up and you shouldn't have sanded it. There's probably some kind of solvent or some other way to get that off of there, but that's what I got. And appreciate your comments, but I think it's going to be good enough. Now I need to make a decision on which door stickers to put on. The original one matches the cab pretty good. Actually, I think that one might also. So now it looks like I either need to go with that one, which is similar to the one I had on the previous truck, or this one that has a darker background and more of a pinkish purplish lettering. I'm thinking for the next Army truck, I think we'll go with one that looks similar to that. Maybe save the pink and blue one for a different kind of truck or something. So that sounds good to me. After wiping down the door with some alcohol, get all the dust off of it. Well, I think I got that centered pretty good like I wanted it. Either way, it's not moving anymore. That looks kind of symmetrical. That one here looks like it's a little closer to the back, but nobody else is going to notice. Looks good. Another bonus that this dump bed came with was it came with this trailer hitch right here on the back, which is adjustable up and down. And I don't have any other trailers to pull, and I'm not sure how low that has to go. Usually on a military Army truck, they usually have a pintle hitch on the back, and the pintle hitches are usually pretty high. And for pulling the dollies, the high pintle hitch is just fine. So I'm thinking that we'll make use of this, what we got here, raise it up as high as we can, and then use this kind of bolt here. Looks like this will make a good hitch to kind of fit through the hole here. And I think I'll go ahead and mount that on there. Okay, that looks like a good diameter. Oh yeah, so that's probably a good shape of a head there. Won't fall off. Fits over the hole. Even kind of looks like a trailer hitch. One challenge we're going to have, though, is once we get the bed on there, in the highest position, it's gonna come down and hit that hitch. So normally, and actually, it's just a bonus anyway. I wasn't planning to have a dump bed. I just wanted a flatbed, normally in a stationary flatbed. But if we want to use it, we can always take the hitch out or cut that thing off a little shorter. So I'm thinking that's going to be okay. Part of raising the cab up higher is where the cab mounts. And currently in the back, it has a magnet that sticks on the top of this battery box. So I'm thinking if I got some longer bolts for the battery box, space them up, that would still work for the new mount. Unfortunately, the longer screws that I have look like a slightly different thread. But fortunately, I have a tap for the longer screw pitch. So I think I'm going to give that a try. Yeah, I think that's going to work out pretty good. I think for spacers, I'll just stack up a couple of these square nuts. It continues to amaze me how difficult it is for me to handle these small items like this. My fingers can hardly hold things and get things in place. Okay, I think I got the new box mounted in there. You can see those spacer screws. It was really hard to hold everything in place. But I think we got the new raised mounts okay now. So I'm thinking right here where this front headache rack mounts, that not only am I going to trim this top piece off, but I'm going to trim this front edge so that the rail, the aluminum rails can go right up against this bar. We'll see how that goes. Once again, I'm using this screwdriver that's a little too big. So on this bar here, I'm going to keep these mounts, and I keep this flat, and I want to cut off probably this top edge. So now with that top lip off of there, that is now flush on the bottom. It looks like we got a little bit more clearance on the headache rack here. And now all I got to do is drill some holes, and we'll bolt that flange to that cross member. So now with that upper flange cut off, it doesn't stick up where the wood is going to sit. I lost my convenient little pocket for hinging, but that just means I need to drill some holes in here and mount that cross member to the frame. So it looks like we're probably going to have a set of screws in this cross member to the hinge part, another set of screws here for this cross member for the magnet cross member, and then another set of two in the front here to hook to this headache rack bar. And in spacing that, it'd be nice, and these screws are probably going to come up and be shown above the wood, so it'd be nice if they were all spaced the same. So here in the front, we have to be narrower than these brackets here. We have to be wider than the frame. I just mocked up a couple parts here to see the spacing on these bracket holes. I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a minute. Okay, how the spacing on this relates is here on the back of the bed. I'm going to have this upright tower behind the cab, and I'm going to use these little angle braces to bolt that into place. And I just was trying to get the spacing how those holes should be. And I want to do that first now, because in the bolts that go down through the cross members, I might decide that this front one doesn't need one. We'll just make use of those two holes that we've already got. Okay, looks something like that. Check the spacing on our mock-up up here. Looks like it's going to be right. With the holes drilled in the aluminum, I mark the plastic cross member that it's going to hook to, and I'll drill those holes. Just make kind of some center hunch holes with the manual drill here before I put it on the drill press. Okay, we got the cross member for the headache rack bolted back on. We got the bracket on top with the little angle braces for the tower. And looks like it fits nicely there. So now we're back to the point of deciding the spacing on these bolts here. And I think for now I'm not going to drill more bolts in the front. We'll just do these three cross members. Now the tower that sticks up behind the cab, I'm thinking that 2 3/8 maybe to the top of the pulley. And if the top of the tower is 1/4 inch above the top of the pulley, that'd be 1/4 inch plus 2 3/8. So maybe 2 5/8. I don't know if you caught it in the video, but I ripped up the old sanding disc there, and we just now replaced it. Have to be more careful I don't catch those sharp edges as easy. Okay, there's the two bars, and I got them marked for the holes. And now to assemble all the headache rack and tower parts. Okay, that looks like it's mostly together, and we'll mount it on the bed. Okay, there it is, all assembled. Oh, I was amazed at how many details it took to make this. So we got these little angle iron brackets, bolted to the base to the frame. We've got the pulley here to run the winch line through. I made a little hole through the top here for this pin. That's just to kind of keep the winch line from falling out of the pulley when you're using it. Have another set of angle iron brackets that poke through the headache rack and bolt to the side of this tower. So it's there's a lot going on here, but I am very happy with how that turned out. For my plan to use this as a work truck, and especially if I'm going to be hauling weights on it, I've noticed that the springs are pretty soft and light. And I also noticed in the Atlas box it comes with an extra set of springs. It says hard on it. So I'm thinking at least I'm going to replace these coil springs with these harder ones. And I'm even thinking that maybe even of doubling them up if I can, making it pretty stiff. It's pretty typical of military trucks to be really heavy springed. Actually, they're almost too hard a riding, like especially when you're on the road and over bumps. And it's funny, the rating on like a 2.5 ton or a deuce or a 5-ton truck, that's the rating that is for off-road. So, for example, a 2.5 ton 6x6 is 2.5 tons of payload off-road, but it's more like double that for on-road. It's more like a 5-ton truck, and or like a 5-ton Army truck would be more like a 10-ton a civilian rig. So anyway, I'm thinking that's one of the things I might want to work on. Now if I can just figure out how to get this shock apart. Looks like a Phillips head screw right there. And we'll see what that does. It holds something together. Notice I'm using the really small screwdriver this time. This is the one that came with the Okay, so it's still being held together with something. Looks like a really small screw at the end here. Okay, there we go. Okay, and here's one in the hard bag. And here's the one that was in it. The soft one's on the right, hard one's on the left. So my crazy idea is to use them both. And what I'm thinking is just kind of overlapping both coils together into one, putting it back together like this, that threaded back in that hole. Now we got both springs on there at the same time. Get this cap back on here again. Now if we can get that little screw back in there. Once again, I wanted to point out how small these little things are and how difficult it is for me to work with things this small. Okay, looks like we got the double spring on there. The factory setting for the height looks like these top holes. So I'm just going to put it back together using those same top holes. Now that the spring is heavier, it's probably going to be okay. Okay, 1 down, 5 to go. Okay, I think I got all 6 springs doubled up now. They're definitely heavier than they were. And once I did 6 of them, it did get easier. I did learn a few tricks. I didn't have to take it completely apart like I did the first one, but it was still hard. Now we put the tires back on. Just to compare the two trucks, the first truck, I already did replace the light springs with the heavy springs. And now with this truck, we did doubled up on the springs. So it's got double springs. So it's the differences you're going to see is when you're crawling over stuff, like here, when I go over a big rock, you can see the rear axle. The other one, tire kind of stays down. But on this one, you can see that because the springs are stiffer, it lifts up the whole truck a little bit quicker. So if you were rock crawling with a no load, you wouldn't want this. Now with the heavy springs, you can see that it doesn't squat down as much with the load. And as you go over bumps with the heavier load now, it's going to walk better over the uneven surface because you got the heavier weight on those springs. Just check the mail, and looks like I got the wood that I've been waiting for the bed. So let's get going. Okay, we got the thing cut. I was surprised how easily it cut with the X-Acto knife. I wasn't looking forward to cutting it with a saw or anything. That looks like it's going to work perfectly. Okay, that should hold it in place while I drill the other holes. Right now I'm using these button head bolts, but eventually I got some countersink bolts coming, and so they'll all be flush mounted with countersink bolts. For now, this will hold them in place good. I like that. The drill press makes a little cleaner holes. I don't need to drill holes on this end, but I'm going to use it to help align the tower. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. The plan is to notch this wood out around these brackets, but I was thinking if I could just stick it in here for now, I could kind of mark around it where to make the cut. Kind of like that. Okay, so the finished product will look something like that. Okay, there's the finished bed, or at least the finished as far as we got it today. I got the wood on there, and now we just need to mount it on the truck. I knew we would have to face this sooner or later, but with the wood on there, the hitch in that current position is blocking it, so I think I'm going to go ahead and trim the top of the hitch. It's time to do it. Okay, here we are with the wood on the bed. I like that it forced this frame to be square, where before it was kind of adjustable, and it's actually fitting much nicer now with the rest of the truck. You can see I trimmed the top of the hitch. So now I got it so that it just barely, that's as far as it'll dump, which I don't really care about, but now it'll hit the ball or the hitch. And also we were concerned earlier about these bolts hitting the tail lights right here, and they're plenty high enough so that there's no interference there. I was just talking to my brother yesterday, and he was giving me a review of my videos, And he says, you know, something doesn't look quite right with this aluminum. And the plan is not to leave them this aluminum colored, but to paint them. So eventually this is going to all be probably, I'm thinking painted flat black. And the same thing back here is all these rails are going to be black. And I'm going to stain the wood so it's kind of a gray weathered look. And then draw some lines on it to make it look like planks of some sort. So when it's done, and this is darker and this is darker, I think it's going to look more correct. So just have patience with me a little bit as I go through this build process. Now that the bed is on, I have to put these little straps on to hold the dollies on, otherwise they just roll off the back. I'm thinking my plan is to have some kind of tie downs or chains or cables that look real, or probably elastic looking things. I'm thinking about making these little mounting bolts like these ones here, just a little bit long. Then I can hook the straps over the top for tie downs. And now that I'm looking at this, I'm thinking the front is sitting too high. Probably go back and take the heavy springs out of the front, lighten up the front a little bit more, so it's kind of riding more level when it's loaded.
I just wanted to say thank you again for joining me tonight. I think we got a lot done. Just to recap a little bit, we got the electrical connector for the headlights. We removed the Atlas logo on the side of the hood. We put the new signs on the doors. As a bonus, we put the hitch in on the trailer hitch. We raised up the battery box for the higher cab mounts. We got the cross members on the frame bolted into the truck. Built the tower behind the cab. Beefed up the suspension by doubling up the coil springs. And installed the wooden bed on the deck. So all in all, I think this was a very successful day in the shop. Just want to say thank you again for watching.